Welcome to the Champs App podcast, where we help players and parents demystify the world of minor hockey development and recruiting for both girls and boys. On today's episode, I talk with Melanie Ruzzi, who is the head coach of the Brown Bears women's hockey team. We discuss her hockey journey from Minnesota to the East Coast playing for Providence College. She also shares her coaching experience as an assistant with several top programs, including Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, before transitioning to becoming a head coach this past summer. We cover what makes Brown University a unique place to both study and play women's hockey, and her plans for the Brown Bears hockey program. This was a great conversation with Mel, and I hope you enjoy it. Before we get to our guest, if you enjoyed this episode and want us to keep making more of them, please share it with teammates and friends. You can also subscribe, like, follow, and even better, it would be great if you would leave us a review. Now, let's drop the puck and get to the show. I'm very excited to have on the podcast Mel Ruzzi, who is the head coach with the Brown Bears women's ice hockey program. Originally from Burnsville, Minnesota, she played hockey at Providence College. After that, she's had a long career as an assistant coach with several programs, including Amherst College, Harvard University, Providence, Yale, and Princeton, before finally landing the head coach job at Brown this past summer. She's also an assistant coach with the U.S. Under-18 girls team for the upcoming World Championship in Sweden, which will take place in just a couple of weeks. Welcome to the podcast, Mel.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
So you just told me right before we started that you're actually a fan of the podcast. You've actually listened to multiple episodes. So you know how we start this with asking about your hockey history and how you started playing hockey in Burnsville, Minnesota.
Yeah, so I might be dating myself a bit, but I grew up in a time before women's hockey wasn't wide ranging, not even in Minnesota. People thought it was always there. But so I have two brothers, one of which is just a year older. So I kind of grew up playing on the pond with him, just playing outside, skating. My dad was a coach of everything we did. And so I would go to practice with my brother on his hockey team every once in a while, but did not play organized hockey until grade 8. So I was in 8th grade. There was a girls program in my town in Burnsville, and I joined at that point. And I had already obviously been skating and been around the game and watched my brother and all of that. And then, that year was also, I think, the first year of high school hockey in Burnsville. And so the next year as a 9th grader, I played hockey with my high school team and just took off from there.
All right. Can I ask you a few questions then?
Sure.
So, first of all, a few years ago, I went with one of my kids to Minnesota for a hockey tournament, and we played at the Burnsville Ice Arena. So is that where you were playing hockey? And was it as beautiful then as it is now, with the beautiful wood arches above both rinks?
Yeah, that's where I played all of my hockey, and I was lucky enough to make the varsity team as a grade 9, so I always played in rink 1 with the nice arches. And yeah, we don't have the funny stuff they have now. They have their own locker room and all the fancy stuff that we didn't have, but it felt fancy to me at the time. So
awesome. Okay, so when you said you didn't really start playing games of hockey until grade 8, so what made you so good to allow you, like leading up to that, to play, to wait until you were in grade 8 to play hockey, organized hockey?
Honestly, if you were to ask me then, I probably would have told you that I would have played softball in college. That was like my favorite sport. I played year round. I think I was a good enough skater. I mean, that's the thing, is like when you're in Minnesota, you have endless access to ice. On days off from school, that's what you do. You go and skate outside, whether it's on the pond in our backyard, or every community has a outdoor rink. So it's very different from being in New England. So yeah, just access. I think that allowed me to, be able to catch up. And I'm just a competitive person. I think, I'm obviously mostly smiles away from the rink, but I'm uber competitive. And I think this is a sport where you need to be. You need to be aggressive and have that mentality. So
gotcha. So we've had a few guests who've played softball and hockey actually during their college time. Many of them you've either coached with or played with.
Yep.
So my next question to you is, in grade 8, once again, still a little bit late to be playing. And on your elite prospects profile, it said you played both defense and forward. So what were you playing at that time?
I was a forward in high school. And then I want to say maybe my senior year, we graduated some good players. Actually, one of the best players I played with, Laura Slominski, was a year ahead of me. She went on and played for the University of Minnesota. and she coached there for a couple of years. She also coached the Edina program in Minnesota. So she graduated. A couple others in her class were exceptional, and we just needed me to go somewhere else. And so I think moving to D actually opened up my chances to move on to playing Division I college hockey, honestly.
Okay, all right. And what was the strength of your game? Was it, offensive defenseman, or was it, you were just both a great two-way player?
I am a defensive defenseman. No, I have very little offense in my game. Even my players now will tell you I have very little offense in my game. But no, honestly, it comes down to like I was and am a competitor. Like I could never play pickup hockey now. Like I will, but it's not fun for me. I'm only good if I can go in and maybe hit somebody. So that was.
So you either give 100% or you don't.
Oh, yeah.
You don't play.
All or nothing.
I gotcha. Okay, so what's your favorite youth hockey memory? So before you headed to Providence, we'll get to that in a moment. But what was your favorite youth hockey memory?
Oh, my very favorite was in grade 9. We played in the state championship game, and back then, now they play in the Xcel Energy Center where the Wild play. When we played, and it was a big deal, we played in the State Fair Coliseum. It's where the horse shows were during the state fair in Minnesota. And we played in front of what I remember to be a sold out crowd. I don't know if it actually was. So that was maybe my favorite memory. And what I remember the most was we lost that game, which was obviously heartbreaking, to Roseville. So I played against Winnie Brote and the Curtin sisters, and they were very good. And
She's
so we
playing.
lost that game, but
She's
I remember
playing for the Whitecaps. Winnie is still playing for the Whitecaps. So I mean, like, very long career. I'm sorry, keep going.
But I remember, the bus ride home. Our assistant coach that year, so Coach Tom Osiki, who's in the Hall of Fame for Minnesota, was our head coach, and Bruce Anderson, who was another one of my math teachers in high school back then. That's who coached. But our volunteer assistant was Mark Osiki, who is now the assistant or associate head coach for the Wisconsin men. And it's so funny when you think back, and all the girls had a crush on him. And so I remember the ride back, we were all sad because we knew he wasn't going to be back the next year. So
I gotcha. Okay, so related to the coaches that you had, who was your favorite coach during that time, and why?
Honestly, like, my dad's the best coach I ever had. So that's like he's never been like a hard guy. He's always been like finding fun in it and being super positive. So
I gotcha.
But I've had endless great coaches. I don't think I've ever had a bad coach. But yeah, definitely my dad is the best.
Okay, and so most kids who grow up in Minnesota dream of playing for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. You decided to take your talents east and go to Providence. So tell us about how that happened and why you chose to head to the East Coast instead of staying in state.
Yeah, so I had some opportunities in state. Minnesota wasn't an opportunity for me, and that's okay. I think they were going, they were already getting some high-end kids. And like I told you, I started pretty late. I had a couple of offers from some other in-state schools, but to me, like, I wanted to get, a great education. I wanted to go to a place with a little bit of history, and Providence College, I think I was attracted to Lori Baker and Cami Granato, and my freshman year, my goalie was Sarah DaCosta. I mean, these are all members of the '98 Olympic team. And so that sort of was the draw there. It was pretty cool to go to a place that had that kind of history on the women's ice hockey side of things.
Gotcha. And you've also played with a couple of previous guests, Kristen Matthews and Holly King, and hopefully an upcoming guest who shall remain nameless at this point. And you played for Coach Bob Duraney. So tell us about playing for Coach Duraney.
Yeah, so his first year at Providence was my freshman year. So he actually didn't recruit me. The previous coach and then the administration is where I committed. And so we came in together, and yeah, I mean, I was lucky, right? He reminded me of my dad in many ways. He coached the full person, right? Like, I think he knew our parents' names, he knew our family, he supported us. So he was, yes, high standards and like wanted a lot from us. And you could tell from our teams, we always finished the year better than we started. I mean, it just goes to show that he was a great teacher. So it was I think he may have been the one that turned me on to maybe someday I'll be a coach. I don't know if I thought about college at that point, but he did just a great job of developing us as people.
Awesome, awesome. And you mentioned you were not an offensive defenseman, but your last 2 years, you actually got quite a few points. The first couple of years, you clearly were a defensive defenseman, but I think you were up to at least 0.5 or 0.6 points per game in your last 2 years in your junior and senior year.
I tell my players now that 50% of the goals I scored were empty net, and I take that as a compliment. That means that I was on the ice to close out the game. So, the points were never something I got myself all fired up about. I think I love to be on penalty kill and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think maybe couldn't even tell you how many points I had. Not many.
Okay, and did you play forward at all while you were at Providence? Because I know Katie LaChapelle played both when she was at Providence. I'm curious if you did.
Yeah, I didn't. I played, I always played D. At one point we were playing what we refer to as the torpedo system. So it was a center back defenseman and then two that were almost like wings. And I always even played the center back. And, we had great defensemen. I mean, I don't know if I can't remember if you've talked to Meredith Roth on this podcast. She's an absolute pleasure to talk to. So I had her on one side. I played with Kelly Helsasak, who was for a long time member of the national program as well. So was Meredith. Kim Mathias was a forward, played kind of D as a back. So like we had so many great offensive defensemen that they don't need me to have the puck too much.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to get into your coaching history because, correct me if I'm wrong, you basically went straight from playing into coaching at Amherst. Am I correct? Sorry?
No, actually, for the first 2 years, so Vicky Lamorello, Vicky Mosession, who's also a Providence alum. I never played with her. She graduated in I want to say 94 or 95. Forgive me, Vicky. I think 94. But she volunteer coached with us. And so when I was graduating, she provided me with an opportunity for my first job out of college. She was running a rink, which is now called Rodman Arena maybe, but it was called Iorio Arena in Walpole, Massachusetts. And so I went there to work for her, helping her to manage the arena. And we started a youth hockey program called the Massachusetts Spitfires, which still exists this day. So for 2 years, I was doing that with Vicky. Vicky had her firstborn at that point. And so a lot of that sort of kind of not fell on my shoulders, but I took on a bigger reign of that. So for my first 2 years out of college, I was coaching, but I was coaching, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, all the way up to like, U12.
Well, that's more challenging than coaching, college hockey. So
yeah, lots of funny stories from those days of being a young coach with some really young kids. But it was my third year out in 2005. I went to grad school at UMass for sport management to get my master's degree. And I served for 2 years as an assistant Amherst there, kind of as a graduate assistant.
So what was that aha moment that said, like, I actually want to do this, like, for a career?
Jim Plumer was a big part of that. So I remember knocking on his door at the Amherst College rink because I didn't even know what Amherst College was. Being from Minnesota, I just didn't know, and it was a Division III program. And so I had a TA position for grad school that I wasn't super psyched about, and I wanted to be involved in hockey in some way. And so I just asked, hey, any chance you needed help? And it just so happened his assistant had just left, and he opened up the door to being a graduate assistant position. And so I was just going to do that to pay for grad school, and I ended up loving it. And I credit Jim because he's a deep thinker. He's really great at engaging his women. He asks a lot of questions. Very much a teacher, and so I really enjoyed his method. We spent a lot of time in the office. I did all my homework in the office when he would leave. I even did the laundry when I was there. But yeah, I just really enjoyed, talking hockey with him and talking about culture. And he is a constant learner. And so I think that's where I was like, oh, okay, this is a cool career path for me.
Gotcha. And so you spent 2 years at Amherst. How did the Harvard University opportunity come up? I'm assuming Katie Stone was doing the recruiting with you.
Yeah, so I applied for the position. At the time, she was replacing both assistants at that time. And so I think I was just lucky. I had applied and interviewed and was able to, work there for 4 years. I always think of that, and no offense to Harvard, but it was like the easiest recruiting job I ever had. We'd call people, and they always take your call when you're Harvard calling. It was sort of funny. It was like the easiest coaching job I've ever had when it comes to the recruiting piece of it. But yeah, it
So
was
actually related to that is, you've
yeah,
coached at Harvard, you've
yeah,
coached at Yale, you've coached at Princeton. Obviously, you're at Brown now. So when are you going to coach at Cornell and Dartmouth?
never.
Yeah,
I hope I'm here for a really long time.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to building this program and see it through. And I still think of myself as young, but yeah, I mean, I want to do something really special here. So yeah, the reason Brown, and we can talk about this maybe later too, but like this is a second home to me, Providence, the city of
Gotcha.
Providence. And I've owned my home in Massachusetts for going on 9 years now. So this was in many ways a homecoming for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're going to get to Brown in just
Sure.
one second. We got a couple more things we want to talk about first. So first, as I kind of mentioned in the intro, you're going to be an assistant with the under 18 team with Katie LaChapelle and Chelsea Walkland. And the tournament's going to be in Sweden. So the first most important question is, can you pronounce the 2 cities in Sweden where the tournament will be held? What are the names of the cities?
I can't. Linköping, maybe?
Yeah.
Linköping. And I didn't even know there was another city, but yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I can't pronounce it either, but it's spelled something like Majolby, but it's
Okay, sounds great.
MJO with 2 dots LBY. So I'm sure you actually did a much better job than I would have done. So that was my question. So so first question is, what was your role in the under 18 selection process this summer? I know in August they got the festival together. Holly Ting, obviously Katie and Chelsea were there, and the team. I was wondering just what your role was this summer in the selection process.
Yeah, I mean, so as you know, last year's Worlds were canceled, and this exact staff was supposed to coach last year. So this has actually been a 2-year process of evaluating and selecting. Our entire staff was on the road at all the district events, whether it was Katie LaChapelle or Chelsea Walkland, Holly Ting, also Whitney Colbert. We were all on the road and evaluating and trying to see, giving everyone an opportunity to be seen, right? That was a big part of it. And then each district, they take us out of it and they select people for national camp. And we were at all of the national camps watching those as well. We had some pre-selections of a number of women for the select camp that took place in July or late June. And then from there, some players earned their spots out of the development camps as well. And that was always a consensus, right? It was a group of people scouting together and hashing it out and hearing different voices and just sort of figuring it out that way. So it was a really intense process, to be honest. Many Zoom calls, trips to watch games. All of us had strong opinions about varying players and what mattered, and really took great leadership from Coach LaChapelle in building that team. And yeah, it was a really super thorough process of watching a lot of hockey.
Yeah. And you guys are ahead of the game, at least compared to Canada, because you had the big festival in August. You made the announcement in October for the team. Canada still has 40 players that they're still going to pick from at the end of the month of December. Hopefully that occurs after this podcast is released. But so they haven't even picked their team. So my question is, what are you and the team doing right now to help prepare for Sweden?
Yeah, so we've had a number. So prior to naming the team in October, we had another festival, which people know about. We went to Blaine, Minnesota, in an event, a week-long event where we played inter-squad games. So we had, I think it was 4 teams, and then we ended the week with a couple of games with the under 23 team. So that was pretty intense to see the UA teams play against the under 23s. And so that was helping to inform our decisions on the final roster announcement in October, using some time in between to continue to evaluate, get on the road, watch those women again. And so now, there was a hiatus from doing much of anything, right? We're kind of going our own ways. This is a tournament team. It's not like the national team. So it's not a full year-long preparation in that way, but we're just getting back together, just doing some Zoom calls with the team. We just had our first one. We have a couple more up to the holidays and after the holidays before we meet up in December 23rd. We'll meet up in for our flight to Sweden.
Okay, so you're leaving before Christmas. Wow. Okay.
No,
So
December 31st.
oh, 31st. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay, so I know you're not the right person to ask this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
Will there be better video streaming provided by the IIHF than 2 years ago with that little Ring camera? Because I got 3 GoPros. I can do it myself if you need anybody. Just let me know. I'll fly over and help out.
In all seriousness, people are fighting really hard to have equality for the women, and the U.S. really leads the way. Right, they're fighting, and Hockey Canada is fighting very hard. And I shouldn't say the word fighting, but just making the case for us as the women's side of things. So my expectation is that the video will be better. We are still very much in a pandemic, and so there are some things that are changing every day and that we're learning about. But I'm sure that's a priority, and I would be pretty confident that you're going to see some better video this time around.
All right, good. Okay, well, so we're going to move on from under 18, but talking about equality, this probably is a good lead in to talking about Katie Gay, who is your partner, and she became kind of pretty famous a couple of months ago as becoming the first woman AHL referee. Tell us what it's like to be supporting her as she kind of pursues this professional reffing career and probably targets being an NHL ref someday.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's said this herself, but this was never like a goal, right? Like, I think she always saw the Olympics in Pyeongchang as her ultimate goal, and her ultimate achievement was to make it there as an official. And she was just so thankful for that opportunity. And so, not to say she was done, she's always trying to get better. She refs Division I men's hockey, women's hockey, Division III. She refs youth hockey. She'll do it all.
Has she ever refed one of your games?
Only summer games. Only summer games, actually. And we should never talk about that again. That created a little bit of a fight in the household. But yeah, never will ref one of my games here at Brown. But I think the AHL opportunity was something she was really excited about. But I think it was really important to her that she went because she was qualified and not because she was a woman. And I think she proved that. I mean, I got to watch snippets of the game. I'm still waiting for her to get one assigned either in Springfield or Providence or Worcester or somewhere close so that I can get to a game and watch her in person. But yeah, I mean, she's a proud person. She cares a lot about her performance, and she cares a lot about getting better all the time. And so one thing she talked about was the team of officials, and those have been exceptional people. She's really enjoyed that.
Gotcha. And did she get to pick her own number for that first game, or you know what I'm talking about? She wore number 99, and you commented it on Twitter about her having to live up to that number. So
yeah, she really is the great one. No, she has since changed her number, and I'm guilty of not even knowing what that number is. But yeah, she wasn't thrilled about wearing number 99. But.
It was 66, I think, or
As if like there wasn't enough attention on her, then they put her number 99. But yeah, all good.
Okay, now unlike you, she actually went to Brown, so I'm sure she's cheering on every game that you guys play because of her, being an alumnus from Brown. Let's talk about how you ended up at Brown after so many years as an assistant coach. How you finally earned the opportunity. Tell us what that mindset was. I mean, you were literally an assistant coach in Division I by math for 13 years before you had this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a long time in my career, I didn't really apply for things. I mean, I really never applied for things. I really loved, what I really enjoyed. I was 6 years at Providence College, and I was so knee deep in building that program. I mean, when I got there, we were, and as an alum, I cared deeply about turning that program around. And, back then you were recruiting, 3 and 4 years in advance. It was a very different climate there. So I was happy there. I wasn't looking to go elsewhere. And the only reason I think it became more important to me because to become a head coach was that my values they became so strong in my beliefs. And when you're an assistant, part of the job is like you you grab onto what the head coach's values are, and you live those, and you do that for consistency for the student athletes. And I just think I was just ready to have another challenge. And so things that open up along the way, I thought, it would be cool to go home to Minnesota. So I sort of had my eye out on some things that might open in Minnesota. And then, this came along, and at the time, like you said, I was at Princeton. Katie and I were living apart. I was living in an apartment in Princeton, and she had our house here in Massachusetts. And so for me, it was just perfect timing. Like to be able to come home, to work at a school that Katie played in the national championship for Brown. So she was here at the heyday, and I think she's really been nothing but supportive, and not just in the background. She's been supportive in every way, like getting in touch with all of her friends that she played with to get support for the program. And the other thing that made it perfect is there's an entirely new structure here at Brown, at the athletic administration. We have a brand new VP of the athletic division, and she's the one that hired me. I was her first hire, and so I'm coming in with a really exciting time at Brown, where there's a great deal of support and additional resources. We just renovated the entire locker room area down to the studs. It was gutted and completely redone. It's a beautiful space, and so now we're in a position where we can compete from a recruiting standpoint as well with any other Ivy.
Gotcha. So let's talk about Brown and College Hill. So obviously you're crosstown rival from Providence, but you're still in Providence, Rhode Island. And like you said, there were some renovations at Meehan Auditorium, which is in your background and in my background. So just talk about the facilities. I believe there's still some construction going on, because I watched one of your games from last week, and I saw one of the ends was whited out with looked like construction covering. So
yeah, so the locker room area is complete. There's a few more things to finish up down there in terms of graphics, but that's pretty much done. There's a brand new lounge for spectators that overlooks one end of the rink. At the other end of the rink where the scoreboard is, they installed a whole new dehumidification system. And so that's the construction they're actually completing as we speak. We're going to break right now for final exams. And so they're finishing up the heavy lifting to get that done before we come back for games again. The next phase of renovations, you'll likely see, in due time. I'm not sure what the date will be, but eventually we're gonna be adding a brand new video scoreboard. Things like that are kind of on the way.
Nice. Okay. Right. And Brown University, it's a pretty good school.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that makes Brown super special, and it sets it apart from any other school, and particularly from the rest of the Ivies, is we have what's called an open curriculum. So our student athletes and our students in general, they can design their education. They can do something in engineering, but they can be specific to, mechanical engineering. And then guess what? They could also take some extra elective courses on photography, or they could do something in history. They just have so much freedom. They can, and the whole point of it was at Brown, and I remember talking to our faculty liaison, one of our faculty liaisons, just the idea of learning in the university setting is you should be studying things you're passionate about. That'll really allow you to grab onto what you're learning. And so it connects to hockey in so many ways. Like our student athletes are passionate about our sport. And so it's the same idea, open curriculum. We've got skill sessions. We've got, different lifting sessions, lifting groups. Our practices are pretty eclectic in some ways too. So I'd like to think it's a full co-curricular experience here at Brown.
Yeah, I just know from when I went to grad school, there was a few undergrads from Brown who I was going to school with, and they were both insanely smart and really independent thinkers. So I'm assuming that's just part of how Brown develops its students.
I think so. I mean, there's so much choice here, right? Like I went to a school that there was such a strong group of core requirements that I had to take. That I think I ended up with like almost a minor in theology, which anyone who knows me kind of laughs about that. I joke that maybe I could become a nun someday, but yeah, like I just think here they can take a pretty wide range of courses. They can take their time to explore what they want to concentrate in. There's a lot of freedom there.
Gotcha. Okay, let's move back to the hockey side of things. You mentioned that Katie played for Digit Murphy, and she is awesome. I've heard her many times speak, and she is not afraid to share her opinions on things. And she really took the program to great heights in the early 2000s. But since then, it's kind of been a struggle since around the 2006-2007 season. You guys haven't really won more than 10 games since that year. So kind of why has the program struggled up until, let's just say, up until your arrival?
Yeah, I think turnover in coaching is hard. I mean, there's been 3 head coaches since Digit left, and I think that's one. You need to have some consistency of coaches to build a program. It doesn't happen overnight in terms of building the talent side of it. But we just talked about resources, right? Like the coaches before me that have since taken over the program, and even back to when Digit was here, right? Other programs were investing, ranks, whether they're new ranks or renovated, scholarships, various things that they were doing. And at the time, Brown wasn't elevating the number of resources they were giving to athletics. And that's why I talk about perfect timing, right? Like now is the time. President Paxson is fully behind athletics as a whole here at Brown. And so we have some resources that, I don't think the coaches before me weren't good enough. I mean, at a certain point, sometimes it's right time, right? Like we have a great athletic director. We have a lot of support. People want us to be successful. Admissions, financial aid has improved dramatically. Even this year, there are more changes coming to provide more financial aid for international students and for middle income families. And so we can really make a lot happen with the resources we have.
Gotcha. And we had Kara Mori on the podcast almost a year ago talking about how the recruiting in the Ivy League is different as a coach than non-Ivy League schools. So what's your perspective on recruiting for the Ivy League? Obviously, the Brown name, I'm sure, just every girl wants to go to Brown just for the school, and getting to play hockey is like icing on the cake. But what's it like, having to recruit? What are the pros and cons of doing it from the Ivy League perspective?
Yeah, I think the hardest, there's 2 things that are sort of hard, right? Number one, financial aid. We want kids very badly. We would offer them a full scholarship if we could. We don't offer athletic scholarships at the Ivy League schools. And so you really need to find players and families who value the education. And, we try to teach that in the recruiting process, that graduating with a degree from Brown University is very different from, any other institution. And what I mean by that is, the network of not only, the alums and the faculty, but your peers. You're going to go through your entire life with these peers who are doing amazing things, and you can bounce ideas off them. And it's a really powerful thing in terms of your career. And just the education itself and the environment you're in, it's a super healthy environment of people who are just growth minded. So the financial aid piece, it challenges because you have to get in the door so you can at least explain that and explain the value of it. On the other side of it that might be challenging is admission, right? It's not everybody can be admitted here, but what we can offer is an opportunity to be admitted. Like we have some significant support in admission that we can recruit some student athletes that we can put forward. Okay. And I talk about that with a lot of student athletes that we meet with. It's like, you look at our acceptance rate. I think last year, the acceptance rate to Brown was 6.6%. So just think about how many people have applied here and never got this opportunity. And I think, hockey can be your opportunity to go to Brown University. Like you said, it's a spectacular place to study. On the other side of it,
can I ask you one question? Can you dimensionalize what kind of grades you need to get into an Ivy League school? Like, is it a 4.0? Everybody needs to have a 4.0? Or really, if you have at least like a 3.x, that should be sufficient to at least be considered?
Honestly, all of our schools, and I don't always want to speak for everybody, but the Ivies the Ivy presidents and the Ivy admission, they're looking for the total package, right? So there is no magic number for a GPA or a test score or things like that. There really is no magic number. It's a full package of a person and what they bring to the table.
So if they have a 2.0, they can make it in?
I don't know. That might be.
All right. I'm trying to dimensionalize. Okay, it needs to be at least a 3.3, 3.5, 3.8. I don't know. I'm just trying to so folks can understand.
I'll say this, and I think this is definitely specific to women's sports. And this is not a knock on our male counterparts, but the female athletes are very smart. Like, I think it's harder to find a kid that's not going to be able to get in than one that will. I think that female athletes, they're typically, especially hockey, they're driven, right? And not just driven to do well in hockey. For the most part, they're driven in life. And so I've never really had a hard time in terms of the academic side. It's more, financially to making it work.
Okay, well, that's great to know. That's great. So you dimensionalized it perfectly. Thank you so much. All right. So I do have a couple more coaching questions for you, which is, now that you finally had a chance to be a head coach, what's different as a head coach than as an assistant coach?
The biggest thing is, the ability to have relationships with the kids. Like, I love our women. But I feel like, and I'm going to get better at this, right? This is my first semester as a head coach, but I'm amazed by just how many meetings and how many things to do, whether it's, fundraising or, engaging alums or department meetings, head coach meetings, budget things that our assistant coaches do a wonderful job of individual video and individual skill sessions, but that's the best part of coaching. And so for me, it's learning how to take back some of that time. So that I can have, even deeper relationships with our student athletes. I think we have pretty good relationships, but I do miss, the morning skill sessions and the one-on-one video and things like that I don't get to do as much right now.
Gotcha. So related to that is, you said you're still learning in your first year as a head coach. What have you done in the last year to become a better coach? Like, what have you done in your personal development to coach yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so the last year, as you know, has been a little bit wild coming from Princeton. We didn't even have a season last year. I'm one of those people that jumped on every single coaching development Zoom call, whether it's through the NHLCA. There's also a female development program through the NHL. Those are big things. Watching a lot of hockey. Coach Plumer with Jim, we had a little coaching tree development session through some Zoom calls over the course of the year. The other blessing that I have, and this really is a blessing, is working with USA Hockey, right? Like, as a staff, building this program out and talking hockey and evaluating and watching hockey, like, that's been nice to stay engaged and kind of learn that way. And then, for me, beyond that, like, I am in the process now working to get a mentor. That's something that Jim sort of talked to me about too, that really helped his development as a head coach, is to have someone else to lean on. When you're an assistant, like, it's easier to find those mentors, and talking to head coaches from other programs. It was really easy as a Division III coach because everyone would share with you. But when you're the Division I head coach, it's harder and harder to find people on the women's side to just be good mentors and people to bounce ideas off of. And so I'll be taking Jim's advice and, reaching out and finding some people that, maybe on the men's side or junior hockey or, whatever league it might be, to try to find some people to learn from as well.
That's great. It's a great idea. I know they certainly do that on the business side, like CEOs. Sure. Almost every CEO has a mentor that helps them, as a coach. So that makes a lot of sense. All right, I know you kind of touched on it in various little pieces, but in like 30 seconds, what's your pitch to a girl who's considering going to Brown to play hockey on the hockey side of things? Obviously, the school side is very clear, but what's your pitch on, hey, you should come to Brown to play hockey because
I think we've built an unbelievable environment in this short time. So I believe in being positive, and I believe in happiness, and our players know that. Like, if I can create a really happy environment where they can be their genuine selves, we have the hockey IQ and development skills to bring them along. And I talk to my players all the time about being efficient with their time, being transparent and in a kind way, and being super positive. So I think we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun playing hockey, and that's what it's supposed to be.
Nice, nice. And you do have a young team, right? You have lots of freshmen
Yeah.
and sophomores, right? You got a few who are graduating. So what's it like with such a young team? Obviously, the real potential for this team is probably a couple of years out. How are you thinking about your team today versus how you want it to, where you want to see it to go over the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first came here to Brown and took over the program, the big buzzword was, change the culture, change the culture. These women are superstar people. I walked into a group of women who, um, I think, I think my level of positivity and like wanting to, embrace this happiness idea, it suited them really well. And so our record's not, not great right now. Obviously, we're not winning a lot of hockey games, but we're growth minded. We're having a great time. We do have 16 women on our team that never played Division One hockey before their first game this year.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that energy's been great because they are new and everything's exciting. And as I speak, we're talking during finals right now, with some optional ice out there, and I've got two players out there working on their game. So I think the future is bright here, but it's not. For me, like recruiting is important. We can talk about that too, but we have some athletes that have some untapped potential, and we're slowly kind of pulling that out. I'd actually say maybe quickly we're pulling that out of them. If you ask people who've watched us play this year, I think they'd say it's a drastically different Brown team, and that has nothing to do with recruiting, right? These players were already here. I think it's just the energy. I think it's small victories. I think we defend really well. I think we're gritty, we're aggressive. I think we got to tighten up our skill set and maybe grow some skills as we get into recruiting there too. But like we're a young group, but we're having fun and we're just getting after it.
And you're playing a lot of competitive games. So I did
Yeah.
watch the Mayor's Cup versus Providence, and you played two solid periods of hockey,
Yeah.
and then it was just the third period. So I'm assuming that's a big sign of a young team that doesn't have a lot of experience to know how to close the door just yet. And I'm assuming that's kind of the stuff you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, we're working. There's a couple of things I think just short term that we need to get better at. I think um, our conditioning needs to improve in the sense that because sometimes we get stuck in our D zone because we're not as clean and efficient on our breakout. Our minutes are hard minutes, and so we need to become a better conditioned team, but we need to be more efficient on the breakout. And then on the other side of it, like our power play, we're no different than any other team, even though we're young. Like we need to have better results in the power play. I think in most of the games I've looked back on and reflect on, we haven't scored on the power play. We've created great chances, right? But I think we need to find a way to win the special teams battle a little bit better. Our penalty kills improved dramatically. I mean, we've really shut the door when it comes to PK and like teaching the kids about those systems. But now we need to reflect on scoring some goals and finishing.
Gotcha. Okay, let's move on from kind of the current team. Let's talk about recruiting, kind of going forward.
Sure.
Just a real basic question. So we're in the middle of December, like you said, the team's on break for finals. So what are you doing as a coach for recruiting at this time of year? Because I know there are some events going on either last weekend or upcoming, right after Christmas. Obviously, you have a big trip planned, but I'm just curious what either your staff, McKenna Newkirk or Justin Simpson, what they're doing in terms of the recruiting these days.
Yeah, well, Justin just returned from Saskatchewan last weekend, and now he's, doing the prep school circuit. Even today, he's going to probably be doing that all weekend. McKenna just got back from Chicago, watching a tournament out there. She'll be on the road again this weekend. Both of them, McKenna and Justin, working incredibly hard. They've given us, they've shown off the Brown logo everywhere they go. I mean, people know that they see us everywhere. I just got back from Ontario. I was watching some games out there over the weekend, 2 weekends ago. I'm going to get over to some prep school games. I'm still watching a lot of things on Instat in terms of, checking out a little bit of what's happening in Europe, especially since I'm heading out there. Yeah, I mean, hey, we're scouring, North America. We're scouring the world looking for great talent. We pulled together a really strong, we feel is a really strong 2022 class, really late. Obviously, we didn't start recruiting here until June, but I think that it was perfect timing with COVID. There were some players out there that flew under the radar that we were really lucky to have committed. And then we've committed the majority of our 2023 class. So we're looking for one, maybe two more women in that class. And then we're really watching some of the younger players now just to get ahead of it before the next cycle begins.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what advice do you have for kids who are kind of the 2023s this year, who they're significantly behind the pace of historically, especially given the rule changes of, the number of recruits that we've seen for the 2023 class? What advice do you have for these folks who are kind of trying to find a place and yet, haven't landed anywhere yet?
Yeah, I think, continue to be in touch with coaches. I think that's really important, and let them know where you're going to be and all of that. And keep the faith. Honestly, like if Division 1 is the right fit for you, we'll find you. If Division 3 is the right fit for you, they're going to find you. It's I think just, I think some of these women, they get so caught up on D1s and Division 3 hockey is high-end hockey. You talked about Holly Ting, like she's done an unbelievable job with that Colby program. I think you're going to see them winning an SCAC championship and NCAA championships very soon, with some exceptional talent there. And so just, keep the faith. But I think more than anything, it's got to be about loving playing hockey. And I tell our players that all the time too. Like, at the end of the day, this is a game. It's supposed to be fun, right? And so when you start getting focused too much, 2 years out in the future and where I'm playing college hockey and all that, it takes the fun out of the game. And they can't control that, right? All they can control is getting out there, working hard, getting better, and having a good time.
Gotcha. And I have about a half a dozen goalie parents who like asking me to ask questions. So one thing that so I get them pinging me on Instagram, and I just get emails and things like that saying, can you ask more goalie questions? So I'm going to ask one goalie question.
Sure.
Related to Brown. So by my math, you will not be needing a goalie because you already have one committed for next year who will replace your senior, and then you have a freshman and a sophomore. So the earliest you would need another goalie is 2024. So how do you think about goalies? And assuming most programs are similar to yours, where you kind of just there aren't that many spots. How should goalie parents or goalies actually be thinking about what's going on these days?
I think for that position specifically, it's like keep the faith. That process is a slow burn process in the sense that you'll see those commitments come a little bit later sometimes. There are some goalies, and you're going to hear them. It's going to stress you out that they commit young and they get a spot early. And it might just be that sometimes, size is attractive, or maybe someone's exceptional at a young age and they get an offer early. But there are always spots a little bit later for goalies. The transfer portal is very active, and it's most active at that position. I think some goalies who might not get an opportunity at a school, so they look to transfer, which opens up a spot. And I will say this too is even if a coach is honest with you and says that, we have a spot, it's probably a D3 or a third string spot, it doesn't mean that you can't change that, right? Injuries happen, development happens, things change. And so, I think, be open to any school that you're interested in, and then, go fight for your life once you get there, right? Yeah. And I think that you have to be patient at that position. It's very different than the forwards and the D.
Absolutely. Okay, that's really helpful. All right, last question. If folks are interested in learning more about Brown or potentially being a recruit, do you guys have camps? How do they kind of raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested in starting a conversation, assuming that they're able to have a conversation with you in terms of their age level?
Yeah, so the recruiting rules, after June 15th of their grade 11 or junior year is the first time we can return phone calls, emails, text messages. We will probably do some day camps, maybe an overnight camp in the summer. We're just kind of getting that all together. Coming out of this COVID year, it's a little bit hard to plan ahead right now, but we're looking to do that here at Brown, and we'll be posting that on our Instagram and on Twitter and our Facebook, just so people can see when those are available. We'll put that out there on social media and on our website. But I encourage people to reach out, even if it's not time for us to reply. We get your emails. You can email us. You can email our entire staff if you want to. There's a questionnaire online you can fill out. We get all those emails. We just don't respond until we're allowed to. But yeah, always welcome to reach out.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Mel, thank you so much for coming on the Chance At podcast. It was great to learn about your playing career, your long coaching career, hearing about Brown. I really want to wish you the best of luck, especially as you kind of build the program going forward. You got a great challenge ahead of you, and it sounds like you got a plan in place to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray. I really appreciate your time. And when this goes out, happy holidays to people. If it's right after holidays, everyone be really safe. And we're getting off to the fun part of the hockey season.
I really want to thank Mel for coming on the podcast. It was great to hear about her hockey journey from Minnesota to Rhode Island and all the coaching stops along the way. Now I understand why so many players want to play at Brown, and wish her the best of luck in her quest to return the Bears back to national prominence. And remember, if you got something out of today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like, follow, subscribe, and even better if you could leave us a review so we can keep sharing this important hockey information with folks just like you.